Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this panel on success off the beaten track. My name is Bimal Sangari, and I'm actually the moderator. I'm from IIT Kanpur, 1991 batch. And with me here is our Devesh Khatu, Prasad Joglekar, and Abhay Bhushanji. So, back in the IIT days, it is not unusual for us to have batchmates who are talented in sports. Some people are really great singers, etc. They're multi-talented for sure. But seldom do you expect them to excel in those other fields. I mean, you are accustomed to seeing them as CEOs of startups, chief architects, scientists in companies, etc. But you rarely hear about their accomplishments in areas which are off the beaten track. And that's what this panel is all about. So today I'd like to basically delve a little bit into the lives and passions of three of our panelists here and get a little bit more detail on each one of them. And we'll start with Devesh, work our way to Prasad, and then finally end with Abhay. So you will all get a chance to ask tough questions and make sure you grill them really well to understand why they do what they do and what makes them tick. Because at the end of the day, some of us are looking for that same type of inspiration in our own lives. So let's start with Devesh's background. Devesh is actually one of 10 Indians on this planet, probably, that have run in all 6 world marathon majors, including the Boston Marathon twice. He has run a total of 82 marathons in 22 different countries with a best of 319. That's a great accomplishment, guys. He graduated from IIT Bombay in 1990 with a BTech in Computer Science and Electrical Engineering and has an MS from UT Austin. He started his career in the software industry where he worked for 7 years and then quit it to become a day trader in trading options for a living. So we'll now basically ask Devesh, what interested you in running a marathon given the more conventional track of an IIT engineer, software engineer, etc.? What took you down this path?
So that's a very good question. Let me begin by a quote by the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, who once said that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with 1 step. So let me backtrack a bit. So after, I was never really athletic growing up, both in high school and at IIT. I was mostly focused on academics. But in fact, in IIT, I used to be teased as a pansy for my walk. Think 20-kilometer walks. And so that must have struck a nerve somewhere, I guess, in me, because I sort of didn't take that lying down, I guess. After coming to the US, I worked in the software industry for about 7 years, but realized that that really wasn't my calling. And that's when I quit and became a day trader, which went great in 1999, but then what goes up comes down. And so, of course, I lost whatever I'd made in the next year. In 2003, my life sort of hit a new low. I was partying in San Francisco and wasting my weekends, both time and money, but also got a chronic health condition. And so that was kind of a wake-up call as to whether my life was destined to sort of go in that direction or should I do something about it? And that's when I took that first step described by Lao Tzu, and which was I joined a local running club. So the club only ran about 3 to 5 miles every weekend, which was not much, but it was a start. And at least I was spending my Saturday nights running and socializing with like-minded people rather than wasting them.
Put it mildly.
Soon I got into some 5K and 10K races, and then the Bay to Breakers, which is about 12 kilometers. But I'd never run anything longer than that. But then some coworkers and friends of mine had gotten into running marathons. And so I thought that would be a challenge to take on, and thereby prove that I was no pansy in the process. So that's what I did. I signed up for the 2005 San Francisco Marathon with the AIDS Marathon Training Program, where you raised funds for the San Francisco AIDS Foundation, and they trained you over the course of 4.5 months. So I finished my first marathon then, and most people, I guess, have a box that will check off that you run a marathon in life. And at that point, I wasn't quite sure whether that's what I wanted to do, if I wanted to continue. But then I signed up for another one in Las Vegas that year because I thought also check out the city with its burgeoning nightlife and dining scene. The next year, I got into the lottery for the New York City Marathon. And so I decided to get a little more serious. I joined a more serious running club called the San Francisco Road Runners Club, which focused more on long-distance running. And besides their Saturday long runs, they also had group coaching to improve your speed and endurance. And then I also started picking international destinations. I ran my first international marathon in Paris the next year, and then in Mumbai, which was a fantastic experience because it's great to run on the streets that you grew up in. There's no feeling comparable to that. My running times were improving to a point where a runner's ultimate goal, which is to qualify for the Boston Marathon, was within reach. And so I decided to run the Chicago Marathon that year because it's a fast and flat course, and with the attempt to qualify for Boston. So I needed a 3:20 for that, and so I trained hard and did a lot of speed work and interval training and so on, and in the end qualified by a minute. In 2000, so I ran marathons in 2009, I was also turning 40. So I thought I should do something special that year. And so I decided to take on a new challenge, which was to run a marathon a month. And so I ran 12 marathons that year, including Boston and London, and a few other big ones around the world. And initially I thought that would be a big challenge, but then it turns out that once you're running that frequently, you sort of are in shape for the next one, so you don't have to train as hard. So that turned out to be a nice way to keep running. Then I got back into my old habits. In 2011, I got laid off, and so I had more time on my hands. And so I needed to refocus my purpose in life. So when I ran my 50th marathon in Mumbai in 2015, I thought that I'd get back to running a marathon a month because I had exactly 50 months between then and my 50th birthday. And so I figured I'd set a new life goal of running 100 marathons by the time I turned 50. And so far, I'm pleased to report that I'm still on track to achieve that.
Can I ask you a question, Dinesh?
Sure, yeah.
So what advice will you give someone, a person like me, who basically, if I run 2 miles on a treadmill, I'm super excited, and my goal is to get to 3, maybe in the next 6 months. How do I start to motivate myself and train myself to run a marathon?
So that's a good question. I mean, everybody has to start somewhere and start small. So like just running 2 or 3 miles in the beginning is fine. You can combine it with a run-walk method where you can run a few miles at a time, run for 5 minutes, say, and walk for 2 minutes, and then sort of improve the ratio so that then you get down to running completely afterwards. But the main thing is you need to really make that a focus in life, because a lot of people will come up with excuses, oh, I don't have time. But that's not really, if you have that sort of mindset, then that's never going to happen. I remember one of my training runs was I had to do a long training run for one of my marathons, and I was very busy at work. But I started a 20-mile run at 9 o'clock at night, and I think if you can do that, then you can do pretty much anything. Yeah. I think. So yeah, so you have to sort of make that a priority. But the other reason people keep asking me why I run, and I think besides, of course, the health benefits and the runner's high that you get from running it, the main reason that I run is because of what others have told me, which is many people have told me that they have been inspired by my lifestyle, and it's inspired them to run either just for fitness or for challenges. And so many people have run their first marathon after sort of seeing my example. And I think that's sort of the main thing that drives me to run. So let me finish by, I guess, with one more quote by the English poet H.W. Longfellow. Lives of great men all remind us, for we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time.
Very nice. Thank you, Devesh.
And I also have a blog, by the way. It's Runners High, that's hi.wordpress.com. So I encourage all of you to follow that.
Okay. Let's open it up for questions from people in the audience about your, Runners High. Folks in the audience, any questions for Devesh?
Actually,
can you repeat the question? Okay.
Yeah, the question was, before a marathon, have you experienced injury and still gone on to run? Is it? Yeah. So injuries are part and parcel of running, and many people have asked how I've managed to stay relatively injury-free, knock on wood, in spite of running so frequently. And so one of the main things is to firstly start with proper shoes. So there are many stores in the Bay Area, like Sports Basement, where you can go and they'll fit you with proper running shoes based on your gait analysis. So that's the first step. The next thing to do is you sort of have to just be aware of yourself, like Deepak Chopra mentioned earlier today. If you are having an injury, then you need to slow down or take a step back. So actually, I did miss my first marathon last year. I'd run in Tokyo, and towards the end of the marathon, somehow one of my ankles got swollen, and I barely managed to complete that. But I ended up missing the next marathon here in Oakland because I thought it would be best to just not run rather than permanently damage the foot. But then I recovered, and I ran a marathon a month again after that for the rest of the year. So yeah, you just have to listen to your body and act accordingly.
Okay, next question.
Hi, my name is Prince. I'm from the Rootkit 2012 batch. I have a more general question. I'm pretty young now compared to many other people here. And I have a question, like, did it give you satisfaction? Maybe, okay, there are health benefits. You're in for a long time. And it's like, I'm asking a very general question. Is like, when I did my engineering, I didn't know whether I want to do engineering or not. And so when you started running, after running for some time, did it give you the feeling that, yes, you wanted to run? Or like you said, your inspiration was because other people started running after seeing you, but that's a loop back. So
right.
Started.
Yeah, I mean, I did actually enjoy running in high school as well. I mean, I was never good at it, but we did have a hill behind my school, and so I ran cross country there. But of course, I was like nowhere. I was somewhere in the back of the pack. But yeah, once I started running marathons, especially, I did find the runner's high to be quite a satisfying feeling, and the sense of accomplishment that you get from it. So I think that was the main reason why I continued running, besides, of course, of the health benefits and all that. So.
Okay. Let's take a last question.
So long distance running gives you a lot of time by yourself. How does that play out in terms of interactions with you, within yourself? Because you're going to think about some things, you're going to be by yourself for extended periods of time.
Actually, that's a very good question. Yeah. So actually, long runs are when you're running for 4 hours at a time, 5 hours at a time, are indeed a time for introspection. And so I've done a lot of thinking during that time. And I also found that I'm actually at my creative best while I'm running. So some of the ideas that occur to my head while running are quite outrageous. But yeah, so it's actually a great time for both introspection and creativity.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for that question-answer session. Thank you, Devesh, for your presentation. Okay, let's move on now to our next panelist. We have Prasad Joglekar here. Prasad has 2 parallel careers, one using his left brain, one using his right brain. He's a chief architect at Ericsson and a founding board member and CTO of a SaaS startup, TimeMint, early stage architect of multiple startups in the optical and wireless networking area. He graduated from IIT Bombay in electrical engineering and got his PhD in optimization of scalability of cloud architecture. In a parallel career, he's also a sitar player. He has learned sitar from many illustrious gurus, and he has performed in India, US, and Canada, and released solo sitar albums as well. So with that, I'd like to ask Prasad, how does he balance his artsy side with the analytical side?
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for your time here. And what you asked is just a challenge I have always been struggling with. It almost seems like my left brain is trying to play chess with my right brain, and I'm just the chessboard, and everybody's just walking over. So, at different times, you have to prioritize different things. And when I was in IIT, I did have to reduce the priority of my sitar and so on. But if it's inside you, and if you realize that it's important, eventually you catch up. Eventually you find time to let that side of you strive as well. Most of us do have multidimensional personalities. And what we get pigeonholed into is a single projection into one profession that we choose or the other profession that we choose. And we kind of ignore the rest of the dimensions that we have and define ourselves by that projection. So I think it's really important to be aware of all the dimensions in which we can grow and not just limit ourselves or confine ourselves to what the external world has defined for us in terms of this job role description or something or the other. I'll go over some of the things that keep me motivated, but I'll give some background about my journey and my lessons along the way. And although music or creative side or the abstract side is different from the concrete side, it's not disconnected. That's something that I realized through this journey. It's actually much more connected than we think. And it really helps to let one side of you power the other side and vice versa. And it takes time. At times, one thing takes back seat and something else takes front seat, but something I always learn to keep in mind. And actually, being an improvisational musician is a test in itself. You're on stage with a lot of people looking at you, a tabla player who's not always friendly with you, and you're always forced to be thinking on your feet. That's a training in itself that helps you in a lot of other areas of your professions or your other things that you're pursuing. And ultimately, the main thing about music is, like Dr. Chopra said, spread the joy. I made these slides before listening to Dr. Chopra, not after. But yeah, it is the same message. So I think it applies to all the fields that we work in. If we can create moments of joy for ourselves and moments of joy for other people, then I think we've been successful. So we'll get warmed up with a really short sample of from my sitar album. If we can roll it for a few seconds. This is last 10 seconds of my album. We just had that much time. But
Prasad, how many instruments were there in that piece we just heard?
Oh, just the sitar and the tabla.
Okay.
Yeah, and the drone, which is in the background. These days we use electronic drone, so we don't need a person to play that.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I think I was born a musician in some sense. I did my first solo harmonium performance when I was 4 years old. My parents taught me how to play harmonium. And my first lesson was that as I look back, anybody starting to learn music or wanting to learn music, learning keyboard is the best thing to start with because there is no holding the instrument, there is no tuning the instrument. And the most important thing is you form a mental map of how many spaces to the right is going to result in a certain change of sound to the higher frequencies, to the lower frequencies. And that mapping that rolls out in front of you really helps you when you learn instruments like sitar, where you can't really see your fingers. Then I learned sitar from various illustrious gurus I mentioned there. When I was in IIT, I started learning from Ustad Abdul Alim Jafar Khan Sahab. And that completely changed my perspective. That changed the way I looked at sitar. Like Dr. Wayne Dyer says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that happened to me. And I was so much into sitar that I thought of being a full-time sitar player for some time. until my parents got worried. And they convinced me that finding a job that actually pays is not such a bad idea. So then I went back to this profession. And I appreciate that now as a parent of kids. Now, the main thing about being mentored by great people is that you're looking for inspiration as much as instruction. It's not about having a regimental thing that you're going to memorize and play in the improvisational music. It's more about inspiration. It's more about finding your own state machine, if you will. And for an instrument like sitar, there is a lot of degrees of freedom as opposed to harmonium or other instruments, which means that the same set of notes you can produce in 10 different ways. Those are called the alankars of sitar. And with the right technique, it triggers your creativity. And your creativity enables you to explore more in terms of technique. So it's really important to have a really, really good mentor for you. That's another lesson. And that enables, and most importantly, I mean, you might ask with YouTube and with so many videos online, why do you need a guru? The answer is a feedback loop that you need. Sometimes we don't know what we're doing wrong or if we are doing anything wrong. So you absolutely need that. And sitar itself is a very fascinating instrument. I've done some talks about the sitar and its own physics in terms of what creates the tonal quality, what creates the magic of the 4 octaves in it, and so on and so forth. But we'll probably not get into it today. So it's a great instrument if you want to try out. So can we go to the next slide? Now, you practice as much as you want, but when you're on the stage, it's always the unexpected. Almost always, you're going to have to deal with something that you didn't plan, especially because it's an improvisational art. You cannot possibly plan 100% of it. Initially, when you start, you're planning out 80% of it, and then you figure out it's more fun to not plan as much. And then your planning and thinking process actually involves one level of abstraction, which is not exactly what you're going to play, but an abstract metadata, if you can call it, about what you're actually going to play. And then as a musician, you always need to have a sense of wonder. When you're playing, I guess it applies to any job. Unless you have a sense of wonder with what you're doing, what you're creating, you're not going to have fun. You're not going to have the moments of joy for yourself or for others. And it's a part and parcel of any improvised music. So it's a blessing that you learn to enjoy that sense of wonder. You enjoy being outside of your comfort zone, because there is almost no such thing as comfort zone when you are improvising. And the lessons from the right brain to the left brain here, don't be bound by your imagination of what you're going to get out of it. Because the kind of things that I learned in sitar and the way they helped me in my other profession, I couldn't have imagined earlier. So in a way, because of my ignorance, I wasn't bound by my own imagination. So don't expect immediate results, but also be open to different possibilities. You'll most likely get something that you never imagined. Comfort zone is overrated. And I would rather make good mistakes rather than stay in my predictable small zone. And with experience as a sitar player, you learn to make mistakes that only you know about in the audience and nobody else figures out. And they help you grow. You don't make them, you don't repeat them again. So it really helps you refine your own technique as well as on your own thinking. And the lessons from left brain to the right brain is keep it simple. Manage the complexity. Don't chew more than what you can swallow. Then there is certain discipline that you need to follow. You need to take the lessons back, put them in your daily practice. And you haven't really done it until you have done it. So you have to, it doesn't work until you can practically demonstrate it. So all of the talk that I'm going to talk about today is about practical aspects of performance. And it's very interesting that we actually do follow the object-oriented model in sitar playing or any kind of improvisational music. We build the class libraries offline, and then we create our own programs at runtime, if you want to use that analogy. Okay, so how much time do we have?
We have 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, okay. So the kind of things that I find common between these two professions that I have chosen is the power of abstraction and and the optimization. So in my day, in my other profession, most of the difficult problems I had to solve had to have some sort of optimization involved in them, whether it's channel planning for wireless base stations, or whether it's allocation of jobs to CPUs, or you're always looking to do something cheaper, better, and faster. The same kind of optimization also applies to your music that you're creating. So I was talking some time back, and then if I give you a poem, a really, really nice poem or prose, and I give you Webster's dictionary and ask you to replace one of these words from the poem by any other word in that dictionary, if it's in an optimal state, if it's a really well done piece of work, you'll say that that's the only thing that fits there. There's nothing else that you can replace it with. Same thing holds with music too. So on the one hand, you want to be minimalist in terms of use of your notes to create that effect. On the other hand, there is structures that you start seeing in the music, in the raga music, there is that you can associate with some of these optimization concepts. For example, symmetry. So many times you associate symmetry with an optimal structure, and nature loves symmetry. We know it's there in many of the systems that occur in nature. We use that in the raga music. It's probably a topic in itself, but it's not a theoretical idea. I wanted to mention that I started practicing some of the things that I found out of abstraction. Because what you find in one rag, there is 55,000 rags. You cannot potentially learn all of them. You can't even learn 100. In a lifetime, I would be happy to play 10. But can I devise some techniques such that I can use what I use to create some aesthetic effects in one rag and apply them to another rag at runtime when I'm performing the other rag, without having to think about it or memorize it or make it sound robotic or regimental.
Prasad, can I interject and ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples to the audience of maybe when the music, the sitar music that you are so passionate about has actually made a difference in your life or the lives of people around you?
Yeah, so maybe we can wrap some of these things up, and then
okay.
That ties to what motivates me really. And I'm going to share some really, really deep personal experiences that I was talking to you about. It comes down to, can you create moments of joy in your life or in the lives of someone who really need it? So episode number 1, it happened 4 to 5 years ago. I get a call from a marketing person who used to work in one of the startups I used to work for. And she told me that her mother, who was 92 years old, was sick with pneumonia for 6 months. And around the same time, she had gotten my CD of Rag Ahir Bhairav. It's a morning rag. And somehow her mom happened to listen to it. And I don't know how she connected that it was a morning rag, because she had grew up near Sacramento all her life. She never heard Indian music probably. But in the last 6 months of her life, every single day she would make her play that Ahir Bhairav CD of mine, and she would sit in the sunroom enjoying the sun. That helped her deal with the pain that she was dealing with in the last 6 months. And I thought that was a moving experience. Second thing, about 2 years ago, one of my relatives' friends in India, he's a 20-year-old person. He was a 20-year-old person, leukemia, and the doctors had given him a few months to live. He got my other CD, the Spuria Kalyan CD, and after he passed, I learned from my relative that he used to listen to it every single day. That would make him feel better. That would make him forget his pain for some time. Third experience, my friend, one of my colleagues, last year, exactly 1 year ago, almost a year ago, he lost his son in a traffic accident in the Bay Area. This was in a shopping mall, and he and his wife and his sister, the boy's sister, were all present at the time of accident. They had such a deep impact. It had such a deep impact on the family that his wife did not talk to anybody for 3 months. I urged them to try sitar. Since October, they started playing sitar with me. And I'm very happy to announce that on the 24th of June this year, 1 week short of 1 year of that tragic accident, they'll be performing their solo sitar piece for 15 minutes. They found some joy in sitar. They play both together sitar for 1 hour a day. And that's the healing power of sitar. And when I hear these stories, I feel like I can actually make a difference in somebody else's life, and that's what keeps me going. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So with that, we'd like to open it up to questions from the audience for Prasad. Yes.
I noticed you said high-quality mistakes are better than small successes. Can you give maybe one or two examples of high-quality mistakes?
Okay. So in sitar, there's a thing called meend. And it's about pulling the string, and it requires a lot of muscle control, smaller muscle control. And it's a risky thing to try when you're opening the concert. You would usually do it a few minutes down into the concert, but if you feel that aesthetically in that context you need to play that, sometimes you have to take the risk. As long as you know how to manage that risk, fully knowing that you're going to make a mistake at times. So there is different techniques in sitar to create the same sorts of effects, but rather than taking the easy path, because it's easy thing to play and it has a similar effect, it doesn't give you the same satisfaction as trying the more difficult thing and getting the exact effect that you want at that point in time when you're creating it. So it's more about taking the risk almost always and being open to making a mistake. But as an experienced musician, I've learned to cover up all my mistakes or most of my mistakes. So that's also part of experience that comes with experience.
Thank you. Okay, other questions? Yeah.
So I'm curious if you have this day thing with running the company and music. Do you feel like there's a conflict while you are working on one and thinking about the other?
Yeah, so in terms of time, there's definitely conflict. You have to multiplex your time between those activities. At the same time, with something that's completely different from what you do otherwise, it really freshens up your mind. So when you come back, you probably come back with more efficiency. And third thing is that you're always challenged to come up with multiple different ways of playing something when you're improvising at the same time. So you're always teeming with ideas is what I've found. After playing sitar or after you get lots of ideas. Now, most of them might not work, but you never felt lost for ideas. So there's a lot of advantages of exercising that side of your brain. And I'm sure all of us have these dimensions that we somehow forget, or we just learn to live with the projections. And as long as you're ultimately getting that satisfaction of creating some moments of joy. It could be because of really well-written code, or really well-done architecture. It could be really, if you're a manager, you're facilitating people to come up with their best. It can take multiple forms, but as long as you're creating joy for yourself and for other people, I think that's what success is about, as we heard from Dr. Chopra.
Okay, with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you so much, Prasad. Thank you for that speech.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, now let's move to our third panelist, Abhay Bhushanji. Abhay actually happens to be a graduate from the first batch of IIT Kanpur. Was that 1965, Abhayji?
Yeah.
Okay. And he also happens to be the founding president of Pan IIT. He's extremely active in the Bay Area in many social services in terms of clean energy, green energy initiatives. He also sort of helps conduct the Gandhi camp, which he may tell you more about as well. He runs marathons as well, and many social events. When we invite Abhayji to attend, he would actually bike down from his home in Palo Alto for maybe 12, 15, 18 miles on a very routine basis to come attend those events. He would not drive like most of us, everyone else does. So with that, I'd like to ask Abhayji to sort of share his story of his life and what motivates him.
Yes, most of us here graduate from IITs, programmed to do technology, excellence, anything. But we have different passions. Like we had music, running is a passion. So my one message to myself and to you all is follow your passions. I also run a kids camp. And the other thing, like Devesh also said, that journey step is the first step. So how do you run a marathon? Well, you put first step, another step in front of that, another friend, do it about 50, 60,000 times, then you cross the finish line. It's as simple as that, really. And training and journey is a reward. So let's go to the next one. So what happens is, first thing, the number of events that happen in our lives, the intersections, and you can travel the beaten path or you can travel the road less traveled. And when you travel the road less traveled, it makes all the difference. So I started with IIT Kanpur, came there, nobody had heard of the internet or connecting computers. So I was there and I thought, a couple of other people, why don't we connect computers together? So I wrote a paper in 1967 Spring Joint Computer Conference. Hey, how about if computers talk to each other? Everybody kind of laughed. There were a few people who were interested. Then Department of Defense, Advanced Research Project Agency, they said, we'll fund this project. So I created MIT Computers, wrote the FTP in 1971, some of the early emails, and then, want to get a job in India. There was no computers really or anything. Forget about networking. They said, oh, computer, we have a job. Sell IBM computers. So हमने कहा पढ़ो फारसी बेचो तेल देखो किस्मत का खेल. So I came back and worked on the ARPANET, internet. Then joined Xerox Corporation for working on the network systems and getting them advanced. And then one of the things that occurred to me, my grandparents were freedom fighters and working there. They told me, do not forget the poor. Please spend some time for their well-being. So I said, I'm going to devote one. Before they passed away in 1969, they passed away in 74. I remembered, I said, I'm going to devote 1 year of my life working for the poor. So I left after 13 years with my family. My wife is there, Saibel. She's there. She's American. She went there, so we worked in the villages with 3 kids near the city of Allahabad, around the villages. Best year of my life. Started biogas plants, some windmills, building on microfinance, getting people best thing. There was not a single latrine, sanitation project, wonderful. WGBH NOVA program did a program, India Machinery of Hope, 20 minutes they devoted on what I was doing. And so my passion for that remained. And I remained by the time I got back, as a social activist helping the poor in India and over here. So the idea is to give back and work for Xerox. And after that, Xerox was getting out of all these network systems and workstation and Windows business. I said, what do I do next? I used to ride my bicycle to work. Because when I moved to Palo Alto, it was 2 miles away. They moved it 8 miles away. I was still riding my bike to work. Best ideas come to me. I said, how about, and Earth Day 1990 was coming. I said, how about if we green Xerox Corporation and green rest of corporate America? So I wrote a 17-page proposal to the CEO and said, hey, we can reduce our pollution to 20% of what it is. At the same time, add $1 billion to the bottom line in 5 years. So he said, what does it take? He said, give my salary and give me a budget of $500,000. He said, done. Okay? So I started the Environment Leadership Program. It was very successful. We saved about $2 billion over 5 years in different ways. And that's another story. And I went on soapbox, and it was just like, I would pay to do that job. I mean, they were paying me, that was fine. It met the bills and everything, but I would pay for it. I mean, I would do it voluntarily and, in fact, pay and contribute money to do it because that's your passion. You want to make the world clean. You want the air you breathe. You go to India, right? How's the air in Delhi? 10 of the most polluted cities, or the 20 or 15, are in India. Why can't we choke? There's always a better way. And I think the idea is to drive with your passion. So after that, environment leadership, I started some companies, okay? One in semiconductor equipment manufacturing, one in email software. They're all kind of successful, moderately or something. And then one of our friends I was supporting as an activist, Dr. Subbarao-ji, who led the largest surrender of dacoits in India, 654 dacoits in Chambal Valley, he said, I'm doing a Gandhi camp here. Why don't you help and volunteer? My kids had grown up, they were in college. So in 94, I said, commitment, I'll come. My company was getting funded. I told the VCs, this week I'm in Gandhi camp. Let's postpone it to 2 weeks later. They said, okay, they respected me for it. We got the funding. But as soon as I went there working with your kids, many of you have kids, it changed my life. It just gave me new perspective. And every year since 94, I have taken 1 week, no matter what I'm doing, to go to Gandhi camp to be with them. And I learn from them. I learn from you, the people you work for. So where's the learning coming from? From each other. And after the entrepreneurship, IIT alumni, IIT Kanpur alumni first, and then Pan IIT when it got formed. So they said, hey, why don't you help grow that? And I said, okay, it would be nice if alumni got together with each other, learn from each other, and have a lot of fun. So the main element of these things is fun. And then in 2001, Asha for Education group, they invited me because I was involved with the forming of Asha for Education in 91, 92 with Sandeep Pandey, Deepak Gupta, and others. They came to me, and we did that. So they said, please give an inspirational speech why we should raise money for education. And spur of the moment, I decided I was going to be 57, I'm going to run a marathon. And I came back and I said, my dad had a heart attack when he was 54. All my uncles had a heart attack when they were in mid-50s. One of them died of a heart attack when he was 56. I said, oh my God, what have I done? I came home and told my wife, well, I'm going to run a marathon. She said, no, you're going to run by yourself. I said, what do you mean I'm not going to run by myself? I'm going to run with you. So she's an equal number of marathons. We trained together. We ran, and I said, okay, what next? Okay. So we ran 6, 7, not 82, like Devesh. I mean, he's my, I kind of bowed to him. 82 marathons, 16 years, my God,
Abhijit, we are a little low on time. Can you help us accelerate?
Okay, the time
also
improved.
tell us what makes you tick and where you get all this energy from.
So just the kind of thing, what I tell is follow your passions. So what motivates me? To give back. To be part of our whole, to be part of you, that you're part of me, to be the kids, to learn and to grow. So one of the things that I found for rewards for a happy, long life is there's just an acronym. I love acronyms. Like, people don't remember what LASER stands for, light amplitude amplification of stimulated emission of radiation. But we just say LASER. So renewal is essentially renewing your spirits. So you are driven by the core. Exercise, marathon or anything else. I did a half Ironman at age 62, organized a ultra marathon, 50-kilometer IIT Kanpur, ran it myself. Now for 60th coming up in 2020 for IIT Kanpur, we're going to run a 60K run and a 60K bike ride, right? So watch that coming. And water is very important. That's what we are made of, substance. Drink a lot of water, whether you're marathon or otherwise. Attitude, positive mental attitude. If you take all the letters of attitude, they add to 100, like A is 1, Z is 20, Z is 26. Attitude makes it 100, okay? Just do it yourself. Rest and recuperation, very important, especially as you're getting older. And diet, good diet, and most important, service. That's what drives me. So you say, what motivates me? Service. The spirit of service, because when you're serving, you're looking beyond yourself. You're getting up from your ego, you're relating to each other. I'm relating to you, you're relating to me. We are one in the spirit. Go back, and what's the future? So as Mahatma Gandhi said, one of my big heroes, the number of heroes that we have role models. He said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in service of others. So that's what it is. Okay. And then finally, which is also Nehru's bedside when he passed away, but the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. I tell my wife, Dare to be 100 book I read, Diet, Attitude, Renewal, Exercise, written by a local author here, doctor. So he said, why do you want to live 100? I don't want to live on 200. I said, no, you want to live, the only purpose to live longer is to serve. And that's what motivates me. Whatever time it is, I want to be fit, I want to be able to serve and to do things for you, for each other, for myself. In serving, I find myself, I do things for myself. And I learn from the kids, I learn from all of you.
Thank you, Abhijit.
Okay?
Let's open it up.
So let your spirit soar. So my message to you is, follow your passions, let your spirit soar.
Let's open it up to one or two quick questions from the audience.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Dr. Kailash Gupta. I'm also from the first batch of Malgad National Institute of Technology. I'm 74, and I'm currently India's third fastest swimmer. But I started running marathon because I'm got a social activist, non-profit for disaster management, to raise funding. And so I'm a swimmer but never ran. But 4 months ago I did half marathon.
Wow.
Now I want to, how can I run to get funding raised? Can you, both of you, help me for my non-profit for disaster management?
Well, interesting thing, because I have been involved with a non-profit here called Indians for Collective Action, and we raise a lot of funds for a lot of projects, which are all non-profit and things. So the way to do it is to really reach people, get them passionate about your ideas. Why do they want to fund you? What are you passionate about? Why should they do it? So you infuse them with that passion, and that's how you get the funding.
That's a very good question, and actually I use my marathons for fundraising as well, particularly milestone marathons. So I ran both my 50th and 75th marathons in Mumbai, And I used both of them to raise funds for the Humsafar Trust in Mumbai, which provides HIV and AIDS services for people in Mumbai. And I'm actually happy to note that a lot of my batchmates from IIT helped me raise over 3 lakhs this year for that, for my 75th, last year actually.
Cool. Okay, thank you everyone. We're out of time, so thank you for the panelists for the wonderful speeches.